Batman Arkham Knight is in a lot of ways Rocksteady's best Batman game to date, and a lot more, it's also the worst. Today on Rambling Reviews, I review the newest edition of the Dark Knight's gaming library. So strap yourselves in and hold down the tank modifier, cause it's gonna be a bumpy ride.
You're coming with me.
You only had to ask.
The first thing you'll notice about Batman Arkham Knight is just how gorgeous it is. From the neon billboards of Gotham City's downtown area to the beads of rain dripping down the Batman's cowl, this is hands down the most beautiful PS4 game I've ever played. And despite the problems that have plagued the PC port, I had very little issues with how the game ran. A few times when chasing someone through the streets in the turbocharged Batmobile, the game would briefly freeze, but it was only an issue I experienced on a few occasions. Other than that, and the occasional texture pop-in, I noticed no bugs or glitches, a feat truly impressive for a game this large. Speaking of that large world, this version of Gotham is without a doubt the most immersive environment yet in a Batman game. It's a blast to soar across and explore the city, but the things you get to do in that city don't always match up to the atmosphere the game creates. Speaking of which, Arkham Knight is a game of excess, excessively gorgeous visuals, excessive side missions and collectibles, excessive gameplay options, excessive use of the Batmobile. It's been said before by better reviewers than I, and will be said again, but this game should have been called Batmobile Arkham Knight, and that's a problem. For what should have been Rocksteady's swan song, their opus, and in some ways it is, the Batmobile/Bat Tank bogs down and strips away a lot of the pleasure to be had by this experience. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of pleasure there. The fighting is as fun as ever and has actually been dialed up in terms of difficulty. I always felt that the previous games began to feel too easy after a couple hours of play, but Arkham Knight has no such problem. The stealth sections are also super satisfying, even if the amount of options has also been dialed way up. Remember what I said about excess? After a while, you'll begin to look at your utility belt as overwhelming and might revert to simple silent takedowns. Thankfully though, these sections provide a great feeling of satisfaction no matter how you tackle them. But every time the game begins to build a rhythm with these excellent sections, the Batmobile flies through and obliterates any sense of pacing the game may have had. These Batmobile gameplay segments are repetitive, exhausting in their ubiquity, and most criminally of all, not fun. The monotony can be broken up with some well-designed side missions, some of them the best in the series. But even here, these driving and tank sections find a way to seep in and tarnish the experience. Why do I need to save Catwoman by racing through a sewer? Why do I need to open this door or blow up this mine by revving my engine? At a certain point, it feels like the developers are simply screaming, "Look at this freaking car! Isn't it great?" No, not really. Now I'm going to get into the game's story and slight spoiler territory. While billed as a whole new original story for the Batman franchise, Arkham Knight is actually another Joker story. That's right, the Joker is yet again the main antagonist of an Arkham game, and it's a major letdown. While his initial introduction in the first few hours of the game is a welcome surprise, he becomes such an integral part of the experience that he's practically a gameplay mechanic. To be fair, the game does have a few great moments that use him well, but for most of the game he's simply there. Remember what I said about excess? It's a shame too, because Scarecrow and the game's namesake, the Arkham Knight, had the potential to be great villains in their own right. Ultimately though, the Knight is just a repackaging of a different character from Batman's literary history, with a twist you'll see coming a mile away. And John Noble's performance as Scarecrow is better than the words he's actually reading off the page. Speaking of the performances, they're the one aspect of the story that trounces any of the other Arkham games. From mainstays like Conroy and Hamill, to newcomers like Breaking Bad's Jonathan Banks. Everyone knocks it out of the park, even if the story itself never really excels and ends up falling apart in the end with a weak conclusion. Like I said at the outset, Arkham Knight is in a lot of ways the best Batman game Rocksteady has ever made. The immersion of the atmosphere and the way Batman plays are better than they've ever been. But the overuse of the Batmobile and the Joker and the weak story keep this from being the Arkham finale we deserve right now. A 3 out of 5.